Coming up
No
on
one
FaceTime.
knew that she's having a baby. No one knew that it would be a boy, but she knew, and she told me the secret. And from that day on, our life and our relationship changed because I realized that she was needing someone she could rely on and trust, and I became that person. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to bring our culture to China. You know, you learn the first 10 seconds meeting someone, you have an impression of who they are. So I teach them how to dress properly. So they have to learn and know what to do with everything on the table. Dining is only one thing.
Paul Burrell is arguably the most famous butler in the world, having served in that role for Princess Diana for a decade before her tragic death in 1997. On behalf of Prestige Education Consultancy, he held a series of etiquette training sessions at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Guangzhou, passing on years of experience gained at the very highest level. He shares his memories of life in the royal household and the magical times he had learning about life at the University of Diana.
Paul Burrell, thank you very much for coming on to FaceTime.
It's nice to be here.
Much appreciated. So tell us, what are you doing here in Guangzhou?
It's the first time I've been to Guangzhou, although I've been around China quite a bit. I'm here to teach etiquette and manners. Now, I know you think that's a word of the past, etiquette, but manners are appropriate for today and today's society.
Why?
Well, because, you see, China has become the world's superpower. And they have a lot of money now in China, and people are beginning to travel all the way around the world. And I'm a great believer in, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when you go to England and to Europe, you really have to know how to fit in to that culture, because we have a very different culture to the culture here. So what I'm here to do really is to teach people how to behave appropriately when they travel to the West.
So who are you teaching?
I'm teaching students, and mainly women and children, because this is a wonderful opportunity for me to bring our culture to China and teach children, because children are the future, and children, once they learn things, they keep a hold of them. And I teach them how to sit, how to talk, how to not interrupt their parents, how to grow together, how to accept losing. We play games where we only have one winner, and I think it's important for children to learn there's only one winner sometimes, but you have to achieve that goal. If you want to do something, go for it. And so these are the messages that I want to give children. You give me a child for 10 years and you can form them for the rest of their life. You give them that information. It's very important to teach them now. So how to hold a knife and fork properly, how to sit at the table properly, how to eat properly, difficult foods, how to do afternoon tea properly in England. It's very different.
This sounds like my childhood. No elbows on the table?
No elbows on the table, how to use your napkin. It's lots of different little things that form a big picture.
But you're also dealing with international business etiquette, so what are some of the key lessons to be learned there?
Well, international business etiquette is very important, because now businessmen are going to the West to do deals, and I think, you know, you learn the first 10 seconds meeting someone, you have an impression of who they are. So I teach them how to dress properly. Shoes are very important for me. So
I look down straight away, yeah. Oh, gosh.
When someone walks in a room and I look at their shoes, I look at the way they present themselves, I look at the way they shake your hands. You've got a very good, firm handshake, which is great, but
Dad taught me.
Well, your dad taught you. Well, I'm here to teach people how to do that, not a limp handshake, a firm handshake. It's all about presentation in the beginning, and then we come down to how to get your message across, business cards, and all those things that matter. You see, I would never have achieved so much had I not been taught those things, because when I went to Buckingham Palace for my first interview, you know, I knew not to sit down until I was asked to sit down. what could I do that was different? When I was 8 years old, I stood in front of the railings of Buckingham Palace, the way all tourists do. And I said to my dad, I'm going to work here one day. And he ruffled my hair and said, yeah, sure you are. Because a coal miner's son couldn't achieve that. But that was my goal.
So, having wanted to do it for 10 years, when you went there as an 18-year-old, you must have been terribly nervous. This was your dream.
It was my dream. And I remember lying in bed at Buckingham Palace the first night, and my uniforms were all lined up on a rail. And I was pinching myself thinking, is this real? It was like all my Christmases had come all together. And I looked through my window across that gravel towards the railings and then the Victoria Memorial and realized I was on the inside, not on the outside. And I was on the inside, of course, for 21 years. That's a lifetime. I always say to people, I went to a great university. I have no qualifications. I'm not an academic, but I went to a university of life, and it taught me much about what I'm doing now.
Because obviously that royal profile has got you known around the world. How is that seen, how are you received here in China? How much do they know about you, Paul Burrell?
I think they're beginning to know more about me because I am the most famous butler in the world. I can actually claim that now.
Yeah.
There are others, of course. There's Jeeves, who's fictional, and there's Carson in Downton Abbey. Yeah, but I'm more like Lord Grantham than
You do bear a striking resemblance, that's for sure. And has that been commented upon?
Well, I met Hugh Bonneville a few weeks ago, and he said to me, I'm sick and tired of being called Paul Burrell. He said, I said, well, you know, I'm called Lord Grantham too. Yeah. People think I'm you. So we have that sort of twin thing going on at the moment.
You mentioned Downton Abbey, hugely popular here in China. How much do you think that sort of plays into the idea that the Chinese are now interested in etiquette and in learning about etiquette?
Isn't it strange? A television show should dictate to the Chinese what is right. Julian Fellowes wrote the show, of course. I know him. And he wrote it with great authority. And if you look at the table settings and you look at the way Carson's serving, it's still the same at Buckingham Palace. Nothing's changed. In 100 years, nothing changes because that is the standard. Of course, etiquette and manners were always taught by the French court, and until Louis lost his head, and then it transferred to the English court, and we sort of dictated how things should be done. I always say if it's good enough for the Queen, and that's the way I do it, it should be good enough for everybody.
How much have you noticed Chinese culture, Chinese etiquette? Let's take dining, for example.
Dining is a minefield because the culture here is very different. It's chopsticks in a bowl, and basically that's it. So can you imagine when I'm teaching 6 or 7 courses, it's rather like the Titanic, and Jack looking at the place setting and saying, is this all for me? Yeah. And I think that's scary for some Chinese people. And they see a row of 6 glasses and think, well, which one is for which and which one do I use first? It is a minefield. So they have to learn and know what to do with everything on the table. Dining is only one thing, of course.
Tell me the others.
Well, what about arriving at the airport or the railway station and scrambling up the escalator or waiting for an elevator? Yeah. There is no etiquette or manners in China. Yeah. In England, of course, we learn to step back and let the ladies go first. Yeah. Or help a lady with a suitcase, or give up your seat on public transport. That doesn't seem to be part of the education here. So maybe there should be some sort of educational program within the government to teach children this is what happens in other countries, and this is what's expected of you when you travel. Because I think if Chinese people did all of these things when they travel, they'd stand out in the crowd. And people would actually say, wow, you've been taught well. I'd like that. I'd like people to think about other people first, and that's what manners are. Manners are all about anticipating what someone else wants before they ask for it. It's also about thinking of them instead of yourself. And I'm afraid here in China, everybody's too busy in their own little worlds to think about someone else.
Princess Diana passed away 20 years ago. She remains much loved and respected around the world for her beauty, character and tireless charitable work. She once said, "Anywhere I see suffering, that is where I want to be, doing what I can." As the man she called her rock, Paul Burrell shares a story about their remarkable relationship and his perspective on Diana's life.
Well, 20 years is a long time, but then again, it seems like yesterday, because I can still remember that tragic event, which did change my life, and I didn't realize it would change it so dramatically in lots of different ways. I now find myself traveling around the world, and I keep looking over my shoulder for her, because I know she's still part of me, and I know once you've been inspired by such an incredible, unique human being, you carry a little piece of them with you for the rest of your life. And I know she's really here, but I can't see her. It did change my life and my world, but I remember what she taught me. I went to a great university of life, you see, and that University of Diana was the most incredible time in my life. When she brought me to places and showed me people. I love people. I love mixing with people. It's a matter of making people feel at ease and making them feel welcome and making them feel warm. That's what I try to do. I try to use her techniques of making people feel as if I'm their friend.
So is that how she inspired you in to take that attitude?
Yes, she could enter a room, you see, and own the room. And that's always my goal. When I get to an event, I want to enter the room and make everybody my friend. And then you're on the winning side. There's always one, though, that you try to win.
You can't quite do it?
You can't win everybody, I know that. But if you can win the majority, then you're on the winning team.
In terms of working for her, how did it come about that you got the job? Because, you know, you'd been working with the Queen. What made you want the job?
Well, I had the best job in the world, of course, didn't I? I was standing beside the Queen. I met whoever she met, and I travelled wherever she went. But then along came this influence that was Diana, and I met her when she was 18 years old. She came to stay at Balmoral for a weekend, and she was lost and lonely. And I befriended her, she befriended me, and our friendship grew from then. And I watched her blossom. And I watched her as the children arrived, and I have to tell you a very intimate secret. One day she pushed me into the dining room and said, "Put your hand on my tummy," she said. I said, "I can't do that, you're a royal princess." She said, "No, I want..."
Etiquette?
No, it wasn't etiquette. It wasn't proper etiquette, no. She was pushing me into a different arena.
Yeah.
So I put my hand on her tummy, she said, "Can you feel that?" And a little kick. She said, "It's a boy." And it was Harry. So she trusted me with this great secret. No one knew that she was having a baby. No one knew that it would be a boy, but she knew. And she told me the secret. And from that day on, our life and our relationship changed, because I realized that she was needing someone she could rely on and trust, and I became that person. So I left the Queen and went to look after her. I should still be with the Queen, really. But Diana took me away from that dusty old world, and she said, "I rescued you, and I brought you into the real world." And that's where I am today, in the real world.
She famously referred to you as her rock. I mean, what did that mean when you heard her say that, when she called you that? I mean,
well, I got letters and correspondence at home that she called me lots of things in her lifetime. She said, "You're the captain of my ship.
Right.
Without you, we'd all be lost at sea. You're my rock. How would I live without you? How could I possibly perform my duties without you by my side?" All those wonderful things. I mean, really, I needed her relationship. She needed me to be there. It was a codependency. We were lost without each other. And really, I should have been there with her in Paris. And when I went to Paris to bring her home, I did say to her, "You should have taken me with you." Now, I know that that's a very sad thing to say, because I had a wife and 2 children, but I felt at that moment in my life, I should have been there. I should have been there. And I do think that she left me behind, and I don't know why.
so how do you look back on the past 20 years? Because your life changed that day. you've been in the full glare of media publicity. You've now got a media career.
Yes, my life really did change, and the spotlight actually swung in my direction and picked me out. And I had to do something with it. What do you do with something like that? Do you shy away from it, or do you grow in it? Do you utilize it? So I thought, rather than go into the dark, I'd come forward and say, this is my friend. In the beginning, if this was your friend, your best friend, would you stand up and be proud and speak of all the wonderful things that happened to you and say, this is the person I knew? Or would you just shy away and say nothing? I think you'd come forward. And I came forward. Because but then you see, if you put your head above the parapet, sometimes you get shot. So I learned to cope with that too. And dealing with the media usually is a double-edged sword, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. And you have to take it as a whole. And I've learned that and took it as a whole.
It's nearly 2 years since President Xi had a state visit, and so that really brought the royal family into sharp focus here in China.
I wish I'd known the president.
And were you in the UK at the time? I mean, how did you see that? And do the people that you train here, do they refer back to that visit?
Well, yes, watching the Premier of China visit England was very interesting for me to look at, because having been to China so many times and knowing the Chinese culture, knowing that sometimes things don't run to timetables and protocol, thinking how that would fit into Britain, because the Queen's programme cannot move.
To the minute?
To the minute. Everything is timed to the minute. That's not the Chinese way. And I think there were problems with the timetables, with meetings, with presentations, and I think even at the top, in government levels, they're not getting the right advice. They're not getting the proper advice, the education.
Etiquette has to start from the bottom all the way up to the top.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're going to have a good presentation, it has to start from the bottom and work up. I'd like to have been involved in some sort of government department in China to give them the heads up as to what to expect. And I think if you're warned and forearmed, it makes the experience much better. Unfortunately, it didn't all go to plan. It was a great success.
For sure, yeah.
And it did bring a lot of trade into Britain and vice versa. I've seen so many Bentleys on the streets of China. It's incredible. So I live very close to where Bentleys are made in Crewe.
Nice.
And I know that most of their export now is to China. So that was part of a state visit.
What do you like most about visiting China and working in China, working with Chinese students?
I like, do you know what I find most interesting is that they listen to tuition here in China. Everyone's very studious. They will take notes. They will listen to what you have to say. They absorb it very quickly. So the education system here is working very well. And they have respect for the people in authority. So when I'm talking, giving a class, they listen to everything.
And that differs from elsewhere?
Oh, absolutely. That wouldn't happen in England.
Right.
They think, what's he going on about? I'm not going to listen to this. But here in China, they want to learn, they want to listen. So if you've got an eager crowd, you're halfway there.
And they are eager?
They're very eager, they want to learn, they want to travel, and they all want to go to England to learn our culture. So I am the stepping stone between China and England.
So it's your first visit to Guangzhou, but you're planning to come back?
I hope to come back to Guangzhou again, yes, because it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
I think this is a city I could actually live in. There are some cities I've been to that I couldn't live in, but this one I could.
Well, you'd be very welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Beryl, thank you very much for being our guest on FaceTime. Very interesting.